Welcome to Ask Angela, relationship advice for love after trauma. I'm Angela Amias, here to help you navigate intimate relationships as I answer real questions about love, loss, and everything in between. This is where we untangle old patterns that keep us stuck and discover new possibilities for connection. Relationships after trauma need a different kind of wisdom, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey there! In this episode, I'm going to be answering Andy's question. Andy writes, when faced with a difficult conversation or moment, I have a tendency to shut down. I withdraw into myself and I just freeze up. My head goes blank and it's difficult for me to focus on the conversation at hand. What are some effective ways to work through this? I struggle to even be willing to understand my girlfriend's point of view during arguments. Also, growing up with parents fighting constantly has affected me in so many ways. How do I keep my parents fighting out of my current relationship? Dear Andy, as you already realize, being open to our partner during a difficult conversation is absolutely essential for the health of a long-term relationship. But that doesn't mean it's easy. Even without past trauma and inheriting difficult dynamics like the one you experienced with your parents fighting, it can be really difficult during tense moments with an intimate partner to stay calm enough to think clearly and listen to what our partner is really trying to say, and then be able to also express our own perspective thoughtfully. There's a lot going on during difficult conversations, so let's unpack this bit by bit. Let's start with your experience of shutting down and freezing up during conflict. Once you shut down, your mind goes blank, and at that point, you aren't really able to follow what your girlfriend is saying because you've stopped taking anything in. What you're describing is a nervous system response to stress. It's your body reacting to your current situation based on what you've learned in the past. Now, we don't get to choose how our nervous system reacts to these kinds of situations. It comes from a hardwired mechanism that the human body evolved over millennia in an effort to keep us physically and psychologically safe. So shutting down, going blank, freezing up, that's all part of the freeze stress response. Biologically, our bodies are designed to activate the freeze response under very specific conditions. Specifically, our body initiates a freeze response when it determines that we're in a situation that's both dangerous and also inescapable. Now, that doesn't mean that your difficult conversations with your girlfriend are actually dangerous or inescapable, of course. It just means that your body believes that's what's going on. Now, I will spare you the in-depth neuroscientific explanation of all of this, but suffice it to say, when we've been repeatedly exposed to very intense stress or trauma in childhood, our nervous system can go a bit haywire. Even decades later, it still overreacts. If there are even mild similarities between what's happening now and what's happened in the past, it's like our body makes the decision that it's better to be safe rather than sorry. And it then activates the whole trauma-based freeze response, even when what's happening now isn't actually dangerous. And because our body reacts far more quickly than the speed of our conscious thought, we often slip into a freeze response before we're even fully aware of what's happening. And as you know, this makes conflict resolution in a relationship pretty challenging. And it can be really frustrating to try to work with this kind of stress response, especially when it kicks in automatically. And often it kicks in even before you really have a chance to decide how you want to show up for an emotionally charged discussion with your girlfriend. The good news is that even though we don't get to choose how our nervous system reacts to stress, we can still work with our nervous system and with our intimate partner to ultimately develop the capacity to have the difficult conversations that are so essential to loving relationships. The key to working with your body is first to remember that even though your freeze response is causing difficulty in your relationship with your girlfriend now, it's actually trying to protect you and keep you safe. So before we go any further, just take a moment to feel a sense of gratitude for your body's protective mechanisms. This is the first step in learning how to work with your body instead of trying to override your body's innate stress response. The most effective way to start expanding your ability to engage in sensitive conversations with your partner is to focus on expanding your window of tolerance for the discomfort that accompanies communicating about hard things. What this means is that you develop the capacity to contain more discomfort without your system powering down completely. This is going to require that you discover some strategies that are personally effective for soothing your nervous system. The process of expanding your window of tolerance takes time, which means that your ability to hang in there while having a challenging conversation will gradually improve as you practice staying calm and hanging in there. Essentially, this is the work of dissolving your body's association between interpersonal conflict and danger. Over time, you'll actually be able to retrain your body to associate these kinds of uncomfortable discussions with more positive feelings of connection and mutual understanding. So, let's talk about what this process of building your window of tolerance looks like within the context of your relationship with your girlfriend. Let's say that you're going about a regular Saturday morning, just tidying up the kitchen after a dinner party that went late into the night, and your girlfriend walks into the kitchen and she says, "We need to talk." Immediately, you notice that your heart starts to race. Your breathing is shallow and your muscles are tense. You sense danger and your whole body is already bracing for what's coming. These kinds of physical responses are signs that you're already on high alert and you're close to your capacity for coping with the emotional distress that accompanies conflict. If we were to think of the window of tolerance as though it were an electrical circuit, your system in this moment has gotten a sudden surge of input, and it's on the verge of being overloaded and unable to process what's happening. When an electrical circuit is overloaded, the system flips a breaker. And that's what physiological shutdown is like. It's your body's built-in safety mechanism for preventing overload. And again, it's designed to protect you, but it makes conflict resolution nearly impossible in an intimate relationship unless you know how to work with your tendency to freeze. So, back to this imaginary morning in the kitchen with your girlfriend, what do? There she is, standing in front of you, with her eyebrows drawn together like she's definitely not happy with you. And your mind is racing through everything that's happened in the last 12 hours, trying to pinpoint what you've done wrong and why she's upset. And at this point, your typical reaction might be to say something immediately like, "What's wrong? What did I do?" But this time, because you're working on expanding your capacity to handle relationship stress without getting overwhelmed and shutting down, you focus on taking a slow, deep breath. And you remind yourself that whatever it is that she wants to talk to you about right now, it's not an emergency. And that means that you can actually pause and take a moment to settle down, to calm your body, and remember that even though these kinds of conversations feel scary, nothing dangerous is actually happening here. In my experience, once a partner understands these kinds of trauma-based stress responses, they can be a great support as we're working toward finding ways to help ourselves stay present in difficult conversations. So ideally, in this imagined scenario here, your girlfriend is already aware that you react to her attempts to talk about issues by getting stressed and potentially shutting down. And she knows this because you've already talked to her about it. You've said something to her like, "Hey, I know we've been having difficulty working through important issues because I shut down every time we try to talk about hard things. My mind goes blank and I just freeze up, and that's why I never have anything to say during these conversations. I just want you to know that I get how frustrating this has been for you because it's frustrating for me too. And I'm in the process of trying to figure this out. I'm going to try doing a better job telling you when that's starting to happen to me so that I can take a moment to calm down and be able to do a better job listening to what you have to say." And because you've already said something like this, in this moment in the kitchen, your girlfriend already knows that this is something that you're working on. And hopefully, she wants to support you in this work. So when you say to her, "Give me a moment here. I feel like I'm about to get overwhelmed and I don't want to shut down completely," she'll know what it is that you're talking about. And she'll hopefully give you the space to calm down. Maybe she might even say something like, "Good idea. Take some time. I'll be in the bedroom when you're ready to talk." When you grow up with parents who engaged in scary forms of fighting, learning how to have difficult conversations is necessary and vital work for creating a relationship that doesn't fall into patterns that you grew up with. When you develop the skills for conflict resolution in relationships, you'll ultimately discover that these kinds of conversations nurture a deeper connection and create a more resilient relationship with your partner. So it's important to be patient with yourself, and it's also important to be persistent in your efforts. One way you can do this is by setting aside time to talk with your partner about how the two of you can work together to shift this pattern in a more positive direction in your relationship. Having a plan already in place for what both of you will do when you get overwhelmed means that all you need to do in the midst of conflict is focus on executing your plan. Anticipate that you're going to need a lot of practice with staying engaged when conflict does arise. Remember that difficult talks don't actually have to take place in one single conversation. When you're expanding your capacity for conflict that doesn't overwhelm your system and trigger a freeze response, you will most likely need breaks in the midst of the discussion. How long those breaks need to be depends on how long it takes you to get back into a calm, centered, and grounded place where you're able to think clearly again and really listen to what your girlfriend has to say. Sometimes all that's needed is 5 minutes in a separate room. Other times it might take a few hours. Or you may need to sleep on it and revisit the conversation the following day. Rome wasn't built in a day, and serious issues are rarely resolved in one conversation. And the more you can approach topics as a series of conversations, the more effective you will be at developing your window of tolerance. For many individuals who freeze during relationship conflict, the temptation is try to avoid difficult conversations if at all possible. And this makes a lot of sense because as humans, we tend to avoid discomfort whenever possible. So my caution for you is that when you need to take a break from a discussion and give yourself time to calm down, make sure you commit to coming back to the conversation as soon as you can. And in addition to circling back to issues that your girlfriend has raised, learning how to initiate difficult conversations yourself will help you to build your emotional capacity for having hard talks. It will also increase your sense of confidence in your ability to confront issues directly in your relationship. So you're no longer just reacting to your girlfriend's attempts to bring up sensitive topics. Like any relationship skill that's worth developing, learning how to have positive and productive conversations around difficult issues takes time and it takes practice. There will likely be times when you surprise yourself and you have an easier time listening to what your girlfriend has to say than you would have imagined. And there will also be other times when you get flooded and overwhelmed and you shut down before you're able to pause the conversation. That's completely expected, and it doesn't mean that your efforts aren't getting results. Just keep practicing. Keep breathing, keep taking breaks when you need to, and keep coming back to these kinds of conversations. And over time, you're going to notice that you're able to maintain your balance during conflicts that really would have thrown you for a loop in the past. And on that note, Andy, I'm wishing you courage, confidence, and the chance to discover safety in your relationship even during difficult conversations. And on that note, listener, thanks for tuning in. That's it for this episode of Ask Angela, relationship advice for love after trauma. If something in this episode resonated with you, come join the conversation at askangela.co. And if you'd like to submit a question of your own to be considered for a future episode, you can also do that at askangela.co. I'll be back soon with another episode, and until then, lots of love.